Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I'm Gary, your host, and this is this is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. Well, this time, it's not an old one. I'm just going to do a brief look and review of this book that has just come out, and I just picked up and just read, because it has been in anticipation. It is EC Comics Cruel Universe. This is the new EC from, was it Oni Publishing? This is Cruel Universe #1, EC Comics, which is a science fiction anthology. This is a cover, great cover by Greg Smallwood. That is an unfortunate name. I'm sorry. and of course, they just recently had published Epitaphs from the Abyss, which is a horrible title. Cruel Universe is much better, and of course, these are their first two publications under the EC banner, the brand, because they bought or licensed the brand. I like the cover design. There's great cover illustration. I like the cover design, very reminiscent, yet more modern of the classic EC design. Even down to have science down here. And of course, it is a science fiction anthology, whereas Cruel Universe, Epitaphs was a horror anthology and extremely disappointing. And I have to say, this is better than Epitaphs was. It has 4 stories in it. The first one is written by Matt Kent, with art by Caro? I don't know. And the second story is by Corina Becko and Kaylin Yarsky. And the third one is by Chris Condon, with art by Jonathan Case. And the last is by Ben H. Winters, with art by Artyom Topilin. I'm sorry, but these names are getting difficult to pronounce. Okay, and the art is probably the best part of the book. And I won't say it's bad. I will not say that the book is bad. It is disappointing, but it is much better than Epitaphs was. I won't go into details on the stories. Okay, good cover. I like that they do have the matte finish on the cover, so it doesn't pick up fingerprints and doesn't have nearly so much glare, and it carries through with the same with the paper, which is not as heavy duty. But I feel that the expense of the paper is wasted. Not just on this. This is across the board with most comics. Cheaper paper for most comics would be fine. You know, I'm a big comic fan going way back, and I don't want to pay for expensive paper and printing on crap. And that goes across the board. So the vast majority of comics that I have seen that are been published are not worth the paper that they're printed on. Because the paper is more valuable than the content, and it's the content that you want to buy. And unless it's extremely good art, extremely good writing, it doesn't warrant this kind of heavy quality paper. I don't get to say that kind of stuff very often, but it's I've been saying it for decades too. But anyway, it has nice art in the first one. The champion is a gladiator story, but it's in a futuristic science fiction setting. People enslaved as gladiators, and then kids with a futuristic version of trading cards of them until and the gladiators reflecting on their lives, etc. And it's some real nice artwork. Good. The Tyrannosauroid looks very good. No, it's not a T-Rex. It is a Tyrannosauroid, and even though it's intended to look like a Tyrannosaurus and a T-Rex, because there were several Tyrannosaurs, not just T-Rex, and they look pretty much alike. They're just different sizes, and they had variations of them. And this is a fictitious one, of course, because you can tell it's not a T-Rex because it's not large enough to be a T-Rex. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Then the second one, Solo Shift, and I think this one is probably the best written of the stories. This first one is probably the best written. This is decently written, and Solo Shift, astronaut observing a black hole and other stuff. I won't get into the story. It has something with time travel in it and time loop, and so it does have a bit of a shock twist ending, which is what a lot of the science fiction from EC was known for, having a twist at the end, and that's fine. Okay. Then the third one, Drink Up, which I don't think should have been in this book at all. It should have been in a horror title. And because there's no science fiction to it at all. It's just a little bit of fantasy. This one is almost like that. Priceless, the fourth one. And this is the one that has, as my friend Dope Comics said, the art isn't as... The best art is in that first story. This... I have no problems with the art in any of them, other than this last one. It's not bad. It has an underground look to it, and in a different venue, it probably would have been fine for this kind of story, for this story, but not here. Like I said, it reminds me of some underground stuff, and is quite qualified, quite capable, and not a bad artist. I don't think it works as well here, but still is probably better than most of what was in Epitaphs. Now, what I wanted to say is, okay, EC is set a standard for horror and science fiction comics. And unfortunately, these don't live up to that standard. Now, the stories that I see in here is more along the lines of the some of the science fiction and horror, because I'm speaking epitaphs as well in this sense, as more along the lines of the horror of science fiction or horror anthology stories that would have been might have been published by Charlton Comics in the 60s and 70s, and maybe some of the DC science fiction, and which is not setting the standard, because EC set the standard and everything else was below that. So if you're going to use the EC brand, you've got to do the same thing if you're going to be true to EC. It's got to set the standard, and it's not setting the standard. Now this is, as I said, this is better than Epitaphs, but I don't think it's worth the cover price. Especially, it's not worth the expensive paper and printing. And so, and one of the problems I have with some of the art, which is just a nitpicky thing, it's not bad. It just some of the art looks like it was done on a tablet, which is, a lot of artists do that. I'm kind of more old-fashioned. I want to be able to see that it was done ink on paper, and this isn't. Of course, maybe the original pencils were, and then inked on the tablet or something. I don't know, but it just does not live up to the standard. And there was another publisher who did EC Comics, used the EC brand, and Tales from the Crypt about a dozen years or so ago. I only got two issues of that, which I talked about a few months ago, and I think they did a better job of keeping up the EC end than this publisher does. Now I'm not saying it's bad, so don't say I said it was bad. It just is not outstanding like it should be. Because remember, the writers for EC Comics, I mean, the artists, first of all, were the top-notch artists in the field. So were the writers. But remember, those writers were readers, and they read a lot of science fiction and horror stories. And they culled some of the best parts from some of the stories that they read. Concepts, plot ideas, and stuff like that, and use them in horror and science fiction. And then they actually drew on some of the best writers of the time, and actually adapted some of their stories, most specifically Ray Bradbury, for both science fiction and horror. Now, if they did something like that, they might be able to live up to the EC brand. And it's not overall, it's not even as good. At least their horror in their horror line, anyway. So far, it doesn't even meet up to Warrant Publishing's Shudder magazine or Vampirist Carmilla magazine. They're closer to the classic EC standard. So that is about all I have to say. It's a mixed review. Whoops! It's a mixed review because it's not bad. It's not as good as I would like. And I'm not enthused about this as I was. But the best part, just like in Epitaphs, the best part was the cover. And that's the whole thing. Has some nice art, has some not as nice art. All the stories are decent stories. They're just not EC quality stories as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for joining me. Please like, share, and subscribe. Do leave your comments down below. What did you think of Cruel Universe? Or even mentions of Epitaphs from the Abyss. Woo! Or the publisher in general. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And remember, comics are art.